call this meeting to order. My name is Ken Strickland. I'm the attending mayor for the moment. Our introduction tonight will be Derek C. Yager. He's going to talk about this and introduce everybody else.
Thank you very much, Acting Mayor Strickland. He likes that title right now.
I only found out 2 seconds ago.
I know. I thought I told you upstairs when you were eating.
I didn't get a chance to practice.
Yeah, but thank you. The mayor is on his way. Something came up, and so he's going to come for a little bit. So he asked me to stall as much as possible. So I'm going to let Jim do one of his history lessons.
No.
I'm just kidding. I told him he couldn't do that this time. But we're here today, and there's really one purpose that we need is direction. We have heard from community groups. We have heard from business owners. We have heard from even a group of bikers from Wisconsin about what you should do and what you shouldn't do with bikers, because they come here all the time. And so our goal is that it is not our responsibility to just listen to all of these different groups and do what one group says or what another group says. So we brought you information that we think is great for you all, and you're gonna. We want policy direction of what you want to do, so we can bring something back to you to approve going forward. Tonight is not a night for a vote. This is not a vote to say you're going to change this or change that. This is for you all to give us consensus of what you think is right for us to bring back to move forward for Bike Week and Biketoberfest. We will give some direction once you make a decision. We don't want any of our property owners or participants to be negatively affected. Oh, so far away, I didn't even see negatively affected by this, but we want to make sure that it meets what's needed for our community. And so they prepared a PowerPoint for this, and here's the purpose and our objectives for this. So they allow the commission to consider various issues raised by the commission through talking with their constituents related to Bike Week and Biketoberfest. And I've looked at some of the articles that go back for the past 10 years and read some of the things to allow the commission to direct staff on issues and practices the commission wishes to have addressed. Won't go through all of this, but it goes back to taking place since 1937. So this is a long-term process for our community. This has made us a true destination. And talking with some of the citizens, the business owners, and even elected officials that are current elected officials in the past, this is something that's great for our community, but we want to make sure that it's sustainable and it doesn't impact our community in a negative way. And so you can see that the partnerships that have been built with the Chamber of Commerce and also the Visitors Bureau that have taken place. And so I won't go through the guidelines. I will let the staff go through it, but the key thing that we're here tonight is to hear from you all what you want. You've heard from, I know, some of your constituents. There are a bunch of emails that go in and out, but we're not here to tell you what we think should be done. I think they've been doing that for a while. Now, how do we improve the quality of the Bike Week program plan? So I'm going to let Mr. Morris come up and he can introduce any other staff member. I know Ms. Ashley Rose will be a part, and then we'll go through the process and allow for the commissioners to direct us once we get to the other areas. Deputy City Manager Jim Morris. And this is being recorded and will be provided afterwards, but it's not live because there's another event upstairs that staff has going on that we could not make it live.
Acting Mayor Commission, good evening. I'm Jim Morris, Deputy City Manager. I'm joined by numerous staff members with Rose Askew, who worked so much on this. City Attorney's Office Representative, City Attorney Jagger, and Deputy City Attorney Ben Gross are here. Also, members of the Chamber are here, and they certainly work with us to bring product forward to you. And as the manager mentioned, our objective this evening is for the commission to weigh in on specifically as much as you can, how you would like to see various things addressed as we go forward. And there have been items of discussion. This is the actual areas that are included in the Bike Week Master Plan area. Now, the red stripe was actually the area, the green shading, are redevelopment areas, but the shading of the red is showing you the areas of the streets that are affected by that. And you'll see there's some outmoded aspects of this, Fairview and Beach Street, which we no longer use, but currently is on the map. We believe that what we should do is reduce the map to the areas that actually are a part of Bike Week and Biketoberfest now, which would be the Main Street area and MMB, as has been extended in the last few months by the Commission's action. But this is the way the map looks now, and it takes the Commission direction at some point in time to modify the map to reflect current conditions. We don't see and don't expect activity along East ISB. Once upon a time it was there. And you may remember there were motorcycle shops and so on out there, but that's all gone away, and really that whole area has changed. Beach Street, of course, has changed radically from when Bike Week was down on Beach Street. City Commission policy directives. So as the Commission sits as a policy body, and that's of course one of your principal duties, and it's our job as staff to do our best to implement the policy directions that the majority of you as the Commission tell us to enact. And as Mr. Beecher said, the purpose this evening is to take consensus action, and we will act on that consensus action and come back to you at a regular meeting when you have the authority sitting in regular session to enact and direct further. So this evening is a direction for us to receive from you that we will do everything we can to implement what you have told us. You'll have a chance to look at the efforts to do what you have directed, and at a later meeting decide whether or not you wish to enact the final product that's brought forward. And also, I should say to you, as you go through the outline, we've listed 3 particular areas. The intention is not by any means to limit your discussion or say that's all you should look at or discuss. If there are other things that you think should be changed, things you think are wrong, and by that I mean the broad subject, not the specifics of how the thing functions or the Bike Week Master Plan, but really the broader subjects to deal with things. And you'll see as we get into the items that there are specifics that we're trying to work on with you, and as we're open to any other directions you may have. So the first item we want to talk about a little bit is existing building use. So existing buildings on Main Street all have zoning particular to the property's location, and it allows retail use to work with all of those properties. But there are a number of those properties that probably do not conform completely to current code requirements. The most common code deficiency you'll see in these old buildings is handicap accessibility for restrooms and moving in and out of the stores and that sort of thing. And the reason we're bringing this up is that we have worked with property owners that have wanted to open their properties for a limited period of Bike Week or Biketoberfest and open them and let itinerant vendors actually occur inside the buildings, which was retail sales activity always intended to occur within a building. But what we've also done is we have not caused them to become fully code compliant. On the other hand, if you were a tenant that was going to open a business and be there year round, part of what we would require as a city would be for you to have a fully code compliant building. That means handicap accessible bathrooms, handicap access to the property, fire code, electrical, all of those things. And in prior discussion, the Commission has talked about needing and wanting to make Main Street a more active place year round. And we all know that that is a goal. But if a tenant comes in to occupy one of those properties, that tenant really wants to go in and be able to get into business in a fairly short period of time. But if they come in, they say, hey, I'd like to rent the property, and they say to the city staff, come down and do an inspection for a business license, and the inspectors come out and they see deficiencies in the structure, the tenant is going to have to, or the landlord is going to have to bring that building into code compliance before the tenant can open. Ordinarily and commonly, the tenant doesn't want to wait a month, 2 months, 3 months to get work done and open. They're ready to go then. But if the building isn't ready, often they just go away. So the object of this approach is that as we go forward, to work with property owners and let them continue to practice a little while longer and have the opportunity to bring their buildings into code compliance in the general purposes of handicap accessibility, life safety, electrical, those sort of things, so that if a tenant comes along, the tenant really has a job of getting the store in shape for it to be their store by painting, windows, signs, those sort of things. But there's not structural issues or code issues that they would have to go through. The landlord have the property ready to go. And without doing each building, I can't tell you how great or small the problem is, but I do know that is an issue, and we intend to move away from the practice of accommodating, saying a building must be code compliant, but we also want to give notice of that and have people have the opportunity to have both the time and perhaps have the income from their building during a bike week and bike over event, take the revenue and reinvest it in the property to try and move it forward so that it goes more in the direction the commission has wanted to see for Main Street, which is to see the more active year-round set of activities occurring on Main Street. To that end, the question to the commission, whether the practice outlined above in terms of temporary use should continue indefinitely or if allowed temporarily, should property owners be advised that by Bike Week 2024, the practice will be terminated. That doesn't mean they couldn't open. If they're going to open, they've got to have a code compliant building when they do it. From that point forward, buildings seeking a BTR will be required to be fully code compliant regardless of how long the BTR may be utilized by a property owner. When you buy your BTR, and it's simply a taxing entity, but it says you can do business here and you pay the appropriate fees to the city, it lasts for a year. But that doesn't mean you have to do business for a year. You can use it for a day, close the door and go on down the road. And what has happened in some instances is open for a brief period of time, the event period, and then the store closes up again, or the building closes up again. And the object is to try and move past that by having buildings ready where tenants can take occupancy of the property. Next item is parking. And so you got parking that occurs because there's not room on Main Street with the vendors and the people that own the properties, the people that work at the properties. You can't physically park all the people that come to town from that. Not to mention that you have people trailering in motorcycles and you have trucks, trailers, some cases there's RVs. We also know that no one wants to have, nor should there be, overnight RV parking. Parking static, not having anybody inside is one thing versus having somebody actually living in the place during the time period they're in town. So parking is a real issue at Bike Week and Biketoberfest, and the commission has discussed it a fair amount. There's also the issue of the area south of Main. I'm kind of mixing a little bit, south of ISB, a little bit in that the Biddorf properties on the south side of ISB are not in the Bike Week Master Plan map area, and for that matter, neither is the north side of ISB. And Commissioner Strickland, you've asked a while back, how does the line get drawn down the middle of ISB? It was simple, but I can also understand why you asked the question. There's two redevelopment zones that have the center line of ISB as a dividing point. Main Street is on one side, and the other side is the Beachside redevelopment. So that you just got, and the line was drawn that way as far as the line in the road. In terms of the Main Street map, it doesn't actually even go that far. It's really centered around the Main Street area as shown in the red stripe. That doesn't mean the commission can't change policies or adjust how you want to do it. There's a number of ways we can do it. And the question that we've asked here is whether temporary parking on unapproved lots is desired, the type of improvements, if any, and for what size lots shall improvements be required, and the areas where parking should be allowed. And really the last question is the one that speaks to, does it go south of ISB? Does it say north of ISB? You're allowed on the north side of ISB frontage, but you're not allowed at all. Those are choices you can make as a commission and tell us what you want to do and how you'd like to see that approach. So probably the big question in this one is C, in relation to the others. You've got the question of temporary parking on unapproved lots. Let's talk about that for a minute. So you've got three examples that I can think of, and they're all slightly different. So just one, just pick a vacant, cleared residential lot in the Beachside neighborhood. Simply there was a house there, it's been bulldozed, nothing was put back, it's grass or sand, and but it's small. It's probably 50 by 75 or 100, something on that order. People will park trailers, trucks, bikes. It's open in that neighborhood, people park there. There's more than one of those properties. The next property, I think, I'm going to lump it together, is the Hennessy property. It's an accumulation of property the Hennessy family purchased adjacent to the streamline. So there was once a restaurant on that property. There was a gift shop on another piece of property. I can't remember the other thing that was there. I think there was a fish store there in one place. And Hennessy has repeatedly used that property. That property has changes in grade. Some of it's paved, some of it has shell on it, some of it is dirt. There's no right of way through it. And simply trying to make it a conforming lot as to grades and so on would be a difficult proposition, but it certainly could be handled better than it has been if it was used for parking on a regular basis with the approval of the city. Now, you probably know, the Hennessy property has been through a number of code violations, overuse of that property, not allowed by the code, not allowed by the master plan. But it's going to be a continuing problem, and it's also a piece of property that's at a central point in Daytona Beach. It's the corner of A1A and ISB. It's very visible to everybody. I'm going to pause a minute while I make it.
Ken, are you going to relinquish the role?
So Mayor, we're on point number 2, and at this moment I'm talking about the Hennessy property. I'm about to move across the street to the Biddorf property. So the Hennessy property is an example of one that's got different surfaces, different grades. There's things that could be done there, but if you do a ton of work, it really turns into a major construction project. And then finally, the last example that I use is the Biddorf property across the street, where he also has a piece of property on ISB on the north side, which is the old Denny's location. Level ground, remains a parking lot there, the building's gone. It's a pretty sound place, the Denny's site is a pretty sound place to park. The property across the street, Biddorf actually has some BTRs from the city for parking on that property. That property is largely concrete, there's some different uses, but it's fairly level. And it doesn't meet city code for a parking lot, which is a parking lot, there would be controlled driveways, there'd be lighting, there'd be street plantings and all that sort of thing. Yet it can still function on a temporary basis. So you got really an array of 3 choices there. The unimproved lot is residential. The commercial lot had multiple things. There's some improvements there, and then there's places where it's missing. The grades are uneven. And then the Biddorf properties, which are actually fairly level and fairly usable as they sit for parking purposes.
I think it was an example of a good example of a parking lot.
Sure. You're the commissioner. You can just have whatever you do. You have a Ford?
Yeah, just give me a location of a really good one. One that you're like, wow, this is a standard.
Well, actually, I think that although it's used mostly for display, the property the county purchased that's on the north side of A1A that they use for the Indian motorcycle display has been the primary use of it. It's fairly solid, and in the old, it's the property, Commissioner Pickman, it's the property the county purchased. This thing is 660, I think it is. North side of Main Street.
Main Street, you said ISB.
I'm sorry.
Or A1A or something.
Yeah, I apologize. I mean the north side of Main Street, adjacent to the old Bad Boys.
Next
Buddy.
to the parking lot that's by the Peabody there.
Yes, sir. It butts up to the county's lot. I think what the county calls parking lot C.
Okay.
And that's a fairly reasonable piece. But again, not all of it meets code. Once it did, you'll see pavers on that property. There's palm trees there, and that was once made into a parking lot pursuant to some Main Street redevelopment rules. Part of the improvements over time have gone away. And then the county purchased it, and when the county purchased that piece, they intended, I think, at first to use it the same as other vacant property on Main Street. Mr. Chisholm stepped in and said to the county, the city would not permit that. And consequently, the city, through the Ocean Center, has leased that property for display, no sales there, so that's why you need it on that property. No sales at that site, you can refer people to other locations. So anyhow, excuse me. Those are the sorts of discussion points there, and I realize the commission will take a number of different looks at that when we come back to this. And then the master plan boundaries themselves. And I alluded to this a little bit a moment ago in respect to 90 ISD and what to do there. The commission has already extended the boundary of the master plan on MNB. It goes down to Fulton Street, starts at the east side of US 1 and crosses over. There was a gap in MNB where the master plan did not apply. And I could not understand on a personal level, I couldn't understand that. And the only illusion I'll make in history now is that I've been here when that was a commercial street and active. I never understood why there was a division. I thought it was unfair to the property owners in between. And I would say directly, the Traegers never said a word about it, but from a staff perspective, we didn't think it made sense. Further, from a staff perspective, we had property owners on the west end of the street that really wanted to be able to do things. And there was things going on there, whether permitted or not. So we extended it to open the door to participation on MNB. And just as a side note, I know this came up at the commission meeting, I think the last one that we had. SAMA, some time back, before I worked for the city, and perhaps before I worked for the city, I'm not sure, had negotiations with the city and got the treatment that they got. And through time, I think the folks that had property on MNB had a belief that in order to do something with Bike Week or Biketoberfest, they needed to go through SAMA. And in fact, they did not need to do that. And when it came clear to Rose and me at a meeting that actually Commissioner May hosted, that some things were going on like that, and SAMA wasn't really following its plan, that's when we subsequently had a workshop particularly focused on MNB and the folks that have property on MNB, and just letting them know, you can do this yourself. You can come directly to us, file an application, and use your property and do what you want to do with that property. I should say just for a minute on the side, because I want to acknowledge her, Ms. Hurd spoke to me over and over again about different things, and I should have listened to her a lot sooner than I did, at least when I finally heard her. And I told you that I should have, didn't I? I apologize, and I said that I shouldn't have. So she was not wrong, and anyhow, that part of it we've done our best to correct. But I will say there are people down in OK who would like to participate. And so we haven't put that up as an area to expand, but the commission can certainly take that on if you wish to do so. You'll also see in the master plan guidelines as they currently sit reference to something referred to as the SAMA area. It is not a defined term. And there have been some questions from folks in respect to RVs and some other things that are kind of scattered out in the vicinity of MNB. And actually the master plan has inexact language that dates back to times that I'm not sure when it came, that permitted that to occur, and it was a practice, it's been a continuing practice. And I know now there have been questions asked and people, I believe, thinking that those events or those practices should not continue, or if they're going to continue, should be managed differently. And as it relates to some of that is RVs, with people in the RVs connecting water hoses from houses and using the bathroom in a house versus the facilities. But that has been a practice that's occurred for a long time, and the folks that are there, at least that use the property, are used to it. I can't speak to what the people that say or think that live across the street or that are next door that aren't benefiting from that activity that have to put up with it during the time those people are there. And y'all will probably know much better than we know about that point of view. So anyway, just going through, there's a number of questions. Should the master plan area remain the same? Should it be removed from areas no longer dedicated? That's my reference to ISD and Beach Street. Should it be expanded? You want to go across ISD? Are there places down MNB that you want to go? And when I say across ISD, I mean on the beach side, the Biddorf property and those vicinities on the south side of ISD. If it is expanded, what areas should be included? If it is expanded, what are you going to allow there? For instance, Biddorf presented a plan. He had vending, he had parking, he had everything. And it was something that really, from the standpoint of the master plan, couldn't be approved anyway, other than if you did something as a special event, which is a separate thing. I'd rather not get into that at the moment. Point being, there are issues there to be addressed in terms of the lines that you draw and what you permit to occur within the lines that you draw, if you expand them or not. Those are all questions the commission can direct. And then finally, I know it's at the bottom of the page, but we certainly, as staff, don't think that we know everything that you want to talk about or issues that bother you. So the other issues referenced is meant for the commission to say whatever things it thinks it wants to talk about. Any member may, of course, raise it, and then the commission collectively can decide if there's stuff that it wants to deal with. And I think that really concludes the things that I have to say. you have questions, I'll try to answer them. Rose is here, and Rose certainly does the nuts and bolts and everything the chamber puts together. They work with us. And I should say, I did see an email today that talked about different things in relation to parking and taking the chamber out of the process. And you got a written reply that I made certain points in that. The chamber, in my estimation, has been an invaluable source of help for the city staff and the city commission. And I think they do it from the perspective of an entity that is interested in the best health of the community at large. And certainly, we would not want to see them eliminated from the process. If they are, then we have to look at how we staff to handle the work that they do. And they do not color the outcome of the process either. They facilitate it. As I noted in my response to the email from Ms. Ruby, the commission, the board that votes on this, the board that's in the Bike Week Task Force board that sends a recommendation to the commission. You as a commission make the decision. You have always made the decision. That power has never been removed, challenged, or questioned. Folks have tried to interpret it as something different. That is, in fact, how it works. That concludes my comments. I'll be happy to answer questions if you have them. Thank you.
Any more questions?
I'm not as well bring up. Go ahead.
Okay, because I'm new, I just want to make sure, to my understanding, the purpose of the CRAs is to increase the value of the properties in those areas?
Of CRAs?
Yeah.
So I believe the purpose of the CRAs is first and foremost to establish an agency to establish redevelopment standards for that vicinity. Secondly, to use tax increment financing for improvements made in the area to create additional funds that will in fact, hopefully, loop back and plow improvements back into the CRA to, in a cyclical fashion, have improvement over time by new investment in development, tax on that, improvements which incentivize other investment. Hopefully it's a forward spiral.
Okay, so now with the Bike Week Master Plan, the reason why it's extended to the CRA areas is to contribute to that. So now I just want to know how.
I don't think that's correct.
Yeah.
If you take the Bike Week Master Plan and Bike Week itself, Bike Week was something that had become fractious. There was a lot of gang involvement. And when Paul Crow was still the police chief, he at some point in time made it his mission to try and make Bike Week a more user-friendly operation for both the police and the people that came. And that, in my recollection, is when it began to be organized more into the formal thing that it is. But as noted in the comments on the front end, it started as far back as the 30s in terms of people gathering, mostly because of racing on the beach. And it progressed through that. But the Bike Week Master Plan was really a management tool to address issues that were occurring by virtue of large crowds of people on bikes, some gang affiliation, law enforcement, and public safety issues. And if I recall, that occurred before CRAs were created that included Main Street and MNB. And if you look at MNB and Main Street, once upon a time this was a divided town, and there was things that occurred on MNB that were part of that community, things that occurred on Main Street that were part of that community. Afterwards, you had creation of CRAs, which had the purpose we already talked about. That's my recollection.
Oh, you look like you want to talk. The mayor's gone. Okay. It's gonna rattle a few people, but that's all right. Let's talk about the parking committee. I would like to see us remove the parking from under the master plan and let redevelopment department regulate the parking on the unimproved lots that are in the redevelopment areas, in the CRAs. Also, to kind of give the neighborhoods, the residents, a little relief, because all around them, there's these unimproved lots owned by different factions, different people that have been being approved for temporary parking. No permit necessary during a certain period of time during Bike Week. Anybody that's in a certain area, do it citywide, because most people aren't gonna be close enough proximity to do it. But, you can park in your yard for 10 days, collect the money, and no need a permit, or nothing, which would give those people some relief from the traffic, the noise, and all of that sort of thing.
So may I say what I think I heard, can you tell me that?
Sure.
So you want to shift the responsibilities of subtract the parking from the master plan,
And put
put
it
it in the
under-
redevelopment area, and in the vicinity described by the commission is basically open parking during the event periods.
for owner-occupied residential properties. Any vacant properties that are in a redevelopment area that's vacant, not redeveloped, that would fall under the redevelopment part to decide if that could be used as temporary parking. Because otherwise, we're incentivizing, not doing anything with it because they can make so much money each year.
And what's the problem with these property owners that have property to make as much money as they wanna make? I mean, that's what makes Daytona Beach, if our businesses are succeeding and our residents are.
I don't have a problem with them as long as they go through the redevelopment department, get a permit to park there. Residents shouldn't have to do that, but they still have to put up with the traffic, the noise, the litter, drunkenness, people passing by. So why can't they just park people on their lawn for 10 days, get $10, $15, $20, $25, and that relieves some of their, alleviates some of their distress because of banquet. Shouldn't be a problem in a lot of cities around that I've been to when festivals were going on, or go to Jacksonville to the Gator Bowl, to a football game. The neighborhoods around there are so.
Oh, sure. It's certainly-
So,
So why would that not be, it wouldn't be a stopping of undeveloped properties having parking, they just have to get a permit. Go through the city and get a permit.
So let me say, Rich, I know you're making your statement to me in the form of a question, which I won't be answering, not because I don't want to, but from the perspective of the commission
Your
giving us
question's
direction.
really good.
It's a great question. It's a question that the rest of the commission should say yes or no.
so.
And once they do that, then we'll enact it, and let me say, and then I will stop.
Right.
There's a secondary point. If you say that, then you need to address the standards that you want to allow for permits to be issued.
Well, what,
In other words, what has to be done to allow the property to be used for parking if you're gonna have a permit?
So, a couple of concerns that I may have, Right now, we have people who would cite for parking on lawns. We would in fact be encouraging that behavior on a temporary basis, provided that they're getting money for it. Secondly, if we're in a community and we're allowing it in CRA area, we're going to have neighbors who are side by side who don't want to have the foot traffic crossing over their lawn or the litter or whatever goes on with it. And it might be completely clean and completely fine, but they also have the right to say that's not what I want here. And originally when I purchased, I'll always go back to this, that was not the intended use for it.
they don't have to park cars in their yard if they don't want to.
But they're still being so if I'm visualizing this, I'm seeing cars parked on one person's lawn, and then the person who is living here, their front area will go unmolested, like there's really nothing going on.
Exactly.
Okay. All right, so I'm gonna take
If you don't wanna park cars in your yard, you don't have to. All I'm saying is, if you're gonna put up with the noise, the traffic, and that sort of thing, people walking up and down the street in the middle of the night, carrying on, whatever, drunk, why should residents not be able to make a couple of bucks to alleviate some of that distress?
And I'm gonna go.
They
step
become a
further.
part of
Sure,
rather
I'm
than
gonna go a step
outside
further.
raising cane.
How about just collect money from everybody, so they choose to participate or not, and then just share equally in the profits? Since what's gonna happen is all the people living there are gonna be subject to it anyway.
You're gonna have one house that can park 3 cars. Say they charge $10 a piece, that's $30. You want them to come over here and pay for a permit with that $30? It doesn't make any sense.
I'm not talking about the permit, I'm saying share it, give it to the rest of the neighbors too who aren't participating. Just because we're charging for something, just a second, we're having a conversation. Just because we're charging for something doesn't suddenly make it okay. There's still people living there. I have sick people, I have old people living there who their peace and quiet should not be disturbed. And putting a price tag on it, I'm having a hard time suggesting that to them.
Parking a car in my yard with older, I don't live over there, but I'm using that as an example, if I have neighbors next door that are old, and somebody parks their car in my yard and goes to Main Street. They park the car, they get out, they go to Main Street. They're not gonna make any noise except for closing the car door. They're not gonna be sitting there playing music, any of that. There's still those people next door, whether they park in my yard or down the street somewhere and walk by their house, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. There will be no extra noise by somebody parking.
Mr. Morris,
Yes, ma'am.
our land development code, for parking lots, it's very strict compared to other municipalities. Is there something we can do, because we need parking, definitely need parking, just not for Bike Week, Oktoberfest. Is there something we can do to make it easier for some of these lots to turn into parking lots, like New Smyrna, for instance? They have 2 parking lots.
Yeah, it's, again, these are policy questions, but let me just step through it if I might. The New Smyrna example is really the south side of Flagler Street. There are buildings and so on the south side of Flagler, some vegetation along the edge of the road. That property was cleared and it's not improved for parking, it's basically just a cleared area. Where when Main Street over there, or Flagler Street gets busy, people do park back there, and there's some other lots further around, which is just basically open parking. And our code requires that you ordinarily have a paved surface, but you have an exception for stabilized surface. And what we would call a stabilized surface is ordinarily going to be, an example, ground concrete, shell, gravel, something other than permanent paving when you talk about a stabilized surface. And we also require, for most all parking lots, that they are paved with either asphalt or concrete that has a stormwater component to it. We also have interior landscaping required for parking, which is landscape islands that you see. And we have perimeter landscaping. And so from a perspective of that, I think you're going to see shortly a PD request that would propose parking without interior landscaping, do perimeter landscaping and screening, and have it, it's going to be in the Main Street area, so that it's a useful field of parking, adaptable for event purposes, and we can have an overlay style approach to the Main Street and the M&B areas, coincident with whatever you decide to do with the master plan that permits that kind of thing. There would be a process. The object would be, and I noted this in some of my writing, when you rise to the level you got to do stormwater retention, your investment has just changed considerably, both in terms of design, engineering, and commitment to property. And I think the objective of the commission, in part, is to accommodate parking where it can be, but not to freeze time and make that permanently become a parking lot. So that it's not something that's so expensive to create, you go, you know what, I've got too much money in this, I don't want to change it because I have money. If that is a case where you've got an investment that isn't changing as it should, and the lot on A1A behind the boardwalk is one that's a 30-year-old temporary parking lot. But it is a temporary parking lot. That's an example of one. Now, it suffered in the storm because there was fencing that got torn down. It does have landscaping, it does have parking stops. That style parking lot could be allowed elsewhere, and there are a number of properties north of ISB and south of the Ocean Center, and primarily south of Main Street, that fit that description. So we can certainly have an overlay and have relaxed standards for parking in those areas. And it would be useful in that business community year-round on the beach, perhaps not as much so right now in M&B, but as M&B improves in more business, perhaps so in M&B. M&B is a little different because there are paved surfaces nearby that are used for bike week, and it's not so much, until you get to people parking in their RVs, you're really not so much in grassy areas. But nevertheless, the intention is to be fair and treat everyone wherever they may be located the same.
Because that's one of the biggest problems we have down there is parking. I mean, I know when I go to visit down there, I don't know where to park, because I don't want to be towed. I do know about the parking lot you had told me, and I parked there several times. But I think if we could loosen up on our land development code, we could have more parking.
It's interesting that you want to loosen up, but I think the history says that that's not what we want to do. but I do understand the concern for increasing parking. And I think that in some ways what Commissioner Strickland is saying might help with that. And I understand the philosophy that if I own a property, I should be able to make money off of it. But I also think that what we have to be sure that we do is that we have to have some standards that make it so that the area gets better. And the reality is that the standards that we've had have done nothing but create sameness. It's just never changed. And I don't think anyone can argue with that. And if we, by policy, because we have the right to make policy, all of this is about policy. The whole Bike Week master plan is policy. So if you say, you can't just have one policy is okay and then this policy is not okay because someone is making money. We got to take the whole cart and say, is the policy good for the city and for our posterity? And are we creating such a policy? And I think at the end of the day, how do we get there? How do we make a decision as a commission that we're actually going to make Daytona Beach better? Not just because one person can make money. Because they make money, it doesn't mean that it's better for everybody. But I do understand the idea that we need more parking, but is that really true every day? That's not, I don't think it's true every day. I think it's just true during Black Week that we need more parking. And that's not really, to me, a reason to say that we want to make more parking spaces. Because Black Week is an anomaly. It's not a normal thing.
If we want our business thriving all year round, we need parking all year round. Our businesses don't thrive all year round.
But it's not.
Because we do not have
But you
parking.
believe that it's because of parking?
I believe it's parking, yes, and I lived here, you're born again, but I've lived here a long time, it's parking. And I agree with Commissioner May. We have residents coming up to us complaining about people parking in the yards and the side of the road, and now we're gonna let them park in. That doesn't make any sense to me. We need parking. If the city can't supply a parking garage, then we need to loosen up on the land development code like the other municipalities do and create parking lots. That's all. Our businesses to survive all year long, and they're not. That's why they count on Race Week, Bike Week, Oktoberfest, which are 2 weeks out of the year, or 3 weeks of Race Week. So,
I think that's a debatable question as to whether we need parking year round.
well, Flagler has parking all year round. If you've ever been down to New Smyrna, that place is booming all weekend. During the week, they have peanuts, they have all the,
It's because
but
they
they
have,
have parking.
it's because they have more parking.
Right, they have, well, that's why our businesses, we don't have businesses because we don't have parking.
Okay.
We don't have businesses year round because we don't have parking. I think some businesses don't want to be open year round, they only want to be open during the most profitable times of the year. And that's some businesses, but not all.
So to Commissioner Cantu's point, I could say that more people might come to the beach and use the surrounding businesses, not necessarily Main Street, but maybe come to some of the other opportunities that we offer down there if they believe that they can park in the surrounding area. Not necessarily say that they're coming to Main Street, because in New Smyrna Beach and Flagler, they go to the area. They don't necessarily go to one particular street, it's an area-wide thing. So I could support that and say for the area.
And just like we wanna have, food truck events, where's the parking? For instance, like 4th of July parade. You can see staff working, I'm sure Mr. Morris will know, asking different people, just like Teresa, do we use your parking? I mean, you need parking. If we wanna have events done.
And again, the parking is not just for Main Street, for those businesses, it's for the areas, the shops, the amusements, the walking there, the going to the beach, the visiting, walking through the hotels. Because I do know that people go to the grand, new one, to have dinner. Or
For
to sit around.
me, what you all are saying is it's a matter of which one comes first. I think people don't go down there because it's not a destination that is worthy of being going to
I could see that
on a
also.
daily basis. I don't think.
I could see that also. Yeah.
But that's just my.
But again, I don't think parking is just for Main Street. It could be not necessarily in that location, but somewhere in the surrounding area, people could park and then go and walk somewhere else. I could see that.
Yes, sir.
I'm not just talking about Main Street, I'm talking about surrounding area, meaning in the surrounding area of Main Street, during Bike Week and Oktoberfest. I'm not talking Fourth of July, I'm not talking Memorial Day, or any of those things. Bike Week master plan, what can we do to improve it? I think it would make it more palatable for the surrounding neighborhoods to allow people to park their cars in their yards, because they're gonna complain about the noise and stuff. Maybe they don't complain as much if they make $50 a day in the yard or something, one park 4 cars, 5 cars.
I do know that the public safety individuals, I want them to weigh in, Drew, because it could be a concern for them how they patrol the traffic and emergency response.
Respective of the bike week events, and I'll speak solely to the Main Street, north and south of Main Street, from Auditorium to Harvey. Petey's not here to speak about the traffic pattern, but we close those roadways for emergency ingress and egress. And if we're allowing parking on those residential blocks, that control measure that we have for the safety, because we close Main Street. And then from residential parking, part of that code is the fire provision. We lose our emergency access to the individual buildings. And I just want that for your consideration.
And you see that when you visit these towns where they allow that type of parking to be referred to. I go and I feel like this isn't safe. You know, this isn't safe. I'm not gonna get out here. I'm an emergency vehicle gonna get down here. And they have a plan, and most of them they can't. But there are areas where people just keep cramming them in there. You can't get out here. So I'm not saying that I favor that. I believe in anything as a conversation to talk about it. But I don't know if I favor it, but I do favor a dialogue.
It's really not taking parking away from people that own those lots in the redevelopment. It's just giving the residents an opportunity to make a couple of bucks, and they don't get to complain as much about the noise and the traffic and the chaos that goes on, that comes along with for those 10 days of Bike Week and 3 or 4 days of Bike Week. That's all I'm talking about. I'm not talking about either way.
We did allow them to do that at one time, because I remember parking at a residential, so there must be a reason why we discontinued that. Well, I was wrong there.
Everybody can see what it does, I mean, you just can't say.
They
did it on something like
No, it was.
Better than a lot, they don't just overcrowd their yard.
Am I correct?
Well, if they overcrowd their yard, is one thing. It's the roadway. It's a question.
And the
You're right,
problem
going
with that,
down.
I know the problem with residential as well. You don't know if you're gonna have someone out there actually charging that's not the homeowner as well. Because I was kind of like, when I parked, I got a different car code, or, you know what I'm saying?
I might point out there that there is one block or so in the master plan where we allow effectively what you mentioned.
Right off of Main Street.
It's actually provided for in the master.
To the south.
To the south of Main Street.
I think Rose is gonna pull it up.
That's pretty interesting. How did they get that? They asked for
They had, I think, kind of a continuation of what Mr. Cantor said, and it got put in place where that neighborhood, and the oddity there was some businesses, they could park in the yard, but they couldn't park in their business parking lot.
Did someone come to commission a few years back?
They have, yes.
Okay, I remember this.
I'll send it via the map of that.
I have the master plan map, but not specifically for that area.
No, it's
But
the,
that's the regulation that allows parking and how it's allowed.
I remember that. And the reason I think they allowed that was to alleviate some of the parking concerns, to
Well,
give them that.
it was in those property owners were making money and they didn't want to lose the opportunity to make money. And the decision was made to keep, the idea being you're gonna keep the business going because the event's occurring, so you want parking for the business to be there, so customers aren't closed out, but you could park in your yard, which I wasn't here when that was created, I thought it was kind of a term I remember, pretzel logic. But, at any rate, there is a component of the plan presently in place that allows roughly on the order of what Commissioner Smith was talking about.
We still do a lot of things because that's the way we've always done it. And I'm not sure that that's the way we always done it, is the best way to do it anymore. And that's why I suggested we allow the residents to park that extra car to in the yard. They're not blocking the sidewalk, they're not blocking the street, it's in their yard, they're willing to put up with that. It's like you don't put up. If you got a yard, you don't want them in your yard, don't put them in your yard.
Do you think the other residents are gonna like that? I mean, just for the vacation rentals, everybody was going crazy about the parking on the side of the road, and I just can't see that.
All in
wanting
my
it.
neighborhood,
And
that's
plus,
what the
like I
vacation
said,
rentals do. They
How
park
do you
across
know
the sidewalk.
that's the
and they
homeowner
put-
renting the parking? I mean, that you're pulling in, and it's the homeowner that's doing it. Because we have a lot of people around here that would start taking money.
Are you referring to cars or motorcycles or cars?
Most people like to park their motorcycle on the dirt, it's gonna fall over. Stand the right way.
If I may, the section 5 that Rose has put on the screen is the one that speaks to the block. Section 5 here is the one that speaks to that block that I mentioned. I said a block, it may be more than a block, but
2, 3, maybe.
I think the central question for this commission is, and it's been the central question since I've been up here. Commissioner Cantu is proposing that we open things up and then we create more parking spaces. There is a way to do that, I would suppose. And that would mean relaxed standards, probably, because no one is going to overinvest in a parking space that's not permanent? Or do we believe that we should hone in on our standards to incentivize the businesses to use their property to a more publicly advantageous posterity? I mean, the future of the area. I think that's really the question. I don't know any other way to say it. And I think the reason that we have not done anything is because the reality is we don't know. And we've never known as a community, and this is way before I got up here, that this question has been asked. And when I first started running for mayor, people kind of supported me in part because they didn't think that I was going to be opposed to Bike Week, and people kind of thought one of the other candidates was going to try to wipe out Bike Week. And I just don't think anybody wants to wipe out Bike Week. But I think we have to, and, you know, I've always been in the mindset that everything has to be discussed, and at some point we got to say, which is it? And then we have to make a decision because this is what's best for the community. And for a while, I think I've always said where I am. But I think each of us has to kind of decide where we are, and then we can figure out a way to try to make things better. And because staff can't make a decision for us. We're going to keep having workshop after workshop, but at the end of the day, we all have to kind of say, which of these logics do we embrace?
So you mentioned two positions, what you said, we know where you stand.
Well,
Where do you stand?
I know where I stand on that.
Oh, okay.
I know where I stand. And if you don't know by now, and I'm not gonna say I don't want to be the person centrally in the newspaper. I've been centrally pushing for these discussions for 10 years, and you haven't. So you all have to decide where you stand, and we gotta make some decisions.
And if we lower our standards on the LDC for parking lots, then why can't we expect that to be a parking lot all year long?
That's a reasonable, excellent suggestion. But why my other point on that is, do we need it? I'm just not of the mindset, and that's why they're not down, because they can't park.
But we have to try to see if we do need it.
That's right.
So once people invest in becoming parking lots all year round, we would have a standard, and this is what a parking lot should look like. I've seen different parking lots, I've seen palm trees, I've seen dead palm trees, but new asphalt. I've seen beautification standards that aren't met in front of buildings, where there's parking and then they have building, right? So I guess my question is, if we're gonna say more parking, then are the standards for that parking lot, we're expanding hypothetical more parking, but would the standard of what that parking lot be the best possible parking lot in the world? Where it is a standard of a parking lot, which at that point, if someone's gonna invest that much money in it, they're never ever going to put anything on it. It's meant to be a parking lot.
Well, that's why we said we would lower our standards for a parking lot.
So we would be expanding.
And, well, that would be up to the commission to direct staff what we want to see out of a parking lot. Like, for instance, I would like you to go to Flagler, look at their parking lots, go around to some of the areas, and then we come back as a commission, and then we discuss what we want to see as a parking lot.
But when you say expanding parking lots, I can go with that. I can see the need for that. But in the expansion process, are we then, use the word lowering standards? You just mean expanding, like expanding the amount of parking lots we have, allowing more places to become parking lots? Is that what you're thinking?
Allowing what they use now during
To
bike
become
week.
right.
Correct.
And then I guess my contribution to that would be,
If they want to, because we can't determine what
I guess
the
my
landowner wants.
contribution to that would be, and make it the best parking lot possible, which would be very expensive, but make it into something spectacular. Do
But
whatever you
that's
have to
what
do.
we have now. And
I don't know if we have that right now.
we pretty much do. It's very expensive in
I
Daytona
know it's
Beach to
expensive,
become.
but I don't think we're spectacular by a long shot. I don't think we're anywhere close to that.
Mr. Morris,
Yes, ma'am.
our
You don't have to
standards,
get into that,
our
I guess.
standards on the parking lots, are they pretty expensive to become?
The standards to create a parking lot that is code compliant is a very substantial expense. You've got engineering, stormwater retention, that's additional area. You've got landscape requirements, irrigation requirements, lighting requirements. Now the beach, you've got turtle lighting standards.
So we would be, so one clarification, we would not only be expanding the footprint of parking lots, but then also changing the parameters of what makes a good parking lot. Yes, that's what we want.
Just to end the discussion, if you take your existing code, you currently have provision for temporary parking lots. And while what I refer to as the Anderson lot has suffered from the storms, it has been there, and the boardwalk, I know, believes that it is essential to their survival because it allows customers to park nearby. It has fencing, it has landscaping, it has parking spaces marked. The spaces are not all paved, and you actually can look at some county oceanfront parking lots that are nicer than what I'm referring to. They use asphalt strips for a path of travel, that you pull off into grass or sand, depending on the terrain. You park your car in a place that you access it via the asphalt strip that is there. There's variation between it, but there's lots of debate, and I don't want to be in your debate, I'm simply trying to answer the question.
Commissioner Perry,
How much parking do we have as a city? And how much do we need? And can we utilize, county's parking? I mean, does the city have like the amount of spaces that We actually have
Well,
city lots.
I can only give you an anecdotal answer, but I'll tell you a couple things. Peabody does parking concession as part of this operation during the events. Ordinarily, revenue stream in that is $80,000 to $100,000 range for any parking. The county has only recently begun using Ocean Center lots to do some paid parking there. Prior to the time that I was at Peabody, the county did not permit Peabody guests to park at the county parking lot. And I went over the head of the administrators to the county administrator, and they opened the parking lots. Because we had instances where people couldn't get to a show and something couldn't happen. So in terms of Bike Week and Oktoberfest, no matter how much you have, you don't have enough. And if you go on a summer weekend to the beach, you will see any number of businesses along A1A, legally or illegally, with signs for parking, and the prices range. The low end is 10. The highest number I've seen is $30, and you'll see that weekend after weekend during the summer.
But Jim, we don't have that number, the last number.
We don't have a number.
We don't have a number of
A number in
city
No, ma'am, we have to go and count the available street parking, the available parking lots. We don't have a census on that.
We don't have a lot of parking. The parking that we have is mainly county, and when we have events, we ask the county if we can use the Ocean Center. We have our Peabody. I mean, we don't have parking. It's a big problem.
And actually, the zone has actually let the Peabody at no charge to the city use her properties, and it is parking, not improved parking, but stable, it's grass, it's clean, it's neat. That's, and Peabody will do that on one occasion with her consent, she's been very kind to do that.
Yes.
I am not talking about changing the LDC. I'm not talking about the parking lot. All I'm saying is to relax our standards just for the 10 days of Bike Week, or 4 days, say 4 days of Oktoberfest. In the neighborhoods, let people make a couple of bucks. Let redevelopment department regulate the parking on empty lots that are in the redevelopment area with permits, charging, and that sort of thing. We just allow people to park a few cars in the parking lot. I'm not trying to do anything to change 365. We're in a meeting here for the Bike Week Master Plan. That's what we're talking about. Not all year, not permanent parking here once and forevermore.
I understand what
You
you're saying, but I also think after listening to Drew, we also need to talk to the chief, and find out what he says about it. And like I said, I'd be very cautious about pulling on someone's residential and giving them money and wondering if my car's gonna be towed. So there has to be a way to know, are they legit? But I think our chief of police, we need to talk to him, because maybe there's a reason why we've never done this.
Okay, Ken, and that's one issue, and I think we can
Move on.
move on and decide and keep that on the table.
Sure.
It's very much on the table, and then you decide as a commission, up or down. I think we understand, I understand where you are,
Oh,
but I think we have, some other things that we have to.
okay. A couple of other things. We're supposed to have 3 citizens on the board. We only have 1. We need to work on getting 2 citizens on there if we intend to keep this board. The other thing is the city gets a share of sponsorship money in Bike Week, but my understanding is we don't get a share of the sponsorship money in Oktoberfest. If anybody can answer that question.
We actually do. I
Sure
think
we
it's
do.
like we can, yeah, we do.
My information is we don't get the money.
No, we do. I don't think it was much, but
We get it once a year, so let's all.
Oktoberfest.
The staff's gonna write that number.
I don't know the answer, I'm sorry.
We do need 3 citizens on the task force board. I'm gonna make the
Why don't we
statement.
have 3 citizens on the task
I'm
force?
supposed to have 2 on there, they only have 1. I couldn't answer the question.
Okay, let's get that fixed. That's what we need to do.
The other thing is I'm not against the chamber, the CBD, or the high board. I'd like to see them continue to do the Bike Week logos, put out public information, promote tourism, do what they do over there, but I'd like to see the city got people who pay down.
Yes. It already
People,
does.
all that stuff.
All that does.
So, in the second point, Mr. Strickland, the pursuant to the biking master plan, all the people come in, pull the permits to do the activities approved as part of the master plan, and we check the code. And we actually use different colored permits year to year, plain colors that are displayed so folks can easily see it. They're also inspected for food safety, fire safety, all of those things.
Well, in that case, why does it need to go through
So you got the configuration, think it was like.
educate?
Well, from the perspective of the master plan, you gotta make sure there's always changing demands from people on the property. And they are events not ordinarily permitted by zoning, they're permitted as an exception to the general rules as a part of the biking master plan or Biketoberfest, which was to kind of carry on and manage the festival. So a lot of people do submit the same plan year to year, they just take last year's plan, turn it in this year, and that's part of what the commission reviews in terms of whether or not to approve it. But the commission also has the ability to say, for whatever reason, that was within the standards, we're not going to approve this particular property. And an example, I think the right of way is Main Station, and just made the order from the commission closed when everyone else did. They were actually excluded from the master plan, you know, to do with their business allowed. That was, it's a management tool as well. So the master plan is reviewed, application submitted to the chamber, reviewed by the committee, recommendation comes from the committee to the commission, and the commission approves. Once the commission has approved, that is the site plan, if you will, for the event for that particular Biketoberfest 2023, Bike 2023. The responding vendors pull permits from the city for their particular business and come in the business licensing office to do it, which is why the week prior to Bike Week of Biketoberfest, you don't want to move it. It's a madhouse, but that's how it works. So they do pull permits, and they have to display them, and if they do not have a permit, they will be shut down. They're caused to come to City Hall. If they don't come to City Hall and get it, or if they're not consistent with the plan, they are shut down by code. The code sends the entire time out. Not everybody, there's a bunch of them out there.
Actually, am I correct? The vendors, the business owner has to pay for their permits, and the vendors they're having on the same property has to pay.
They also pay.
Yeah. I think that's a little crazy to me, but we make some money off that.
That's where some of your bikers funds come at the expense of your fund.
Correct.
So, say that again, the vendors, so our people here pay.
Our businesses
Pay in
on
order to
the
be able to
convention,
do it.
they pay for the permit. Okay.
And then their vendors.
And then their vendors also pay for a permit. Have to pay in, so we make quite a bit of money.
Good evening. Rose Askew, I'm the project manager for growth management and planning. I process the Viking master plan for Viking Biketoberfest. There's a process in place. The chamber and the CVB do the intake for the applications. The applicants apply through them. They take them all in, put them together, they come to the city. The city has a team of employees from permits and licensing, fire, traffic, utilities, stormwater, everywhere that actually reviews that. And we review it for everything that the city requires, including land development code criteria. We review it for completeness of applications. And then we as staff put together comments and provide them back to the chamber and the CVB to have applicants update their documents to correct them to make sure we have everything they need. Once we get all of that information together, either the chamber or the CVB, based on which event it is, they schedule a public meeting. And then the boards review it, they've already reviewed it, they sit around, they talk about it. The people who participate in the event are there to ask questions. We address them while we're there. This year, they actually gave them an additional week to get back the documents that we needed. Once we get all of that information in, the updated master plan is then returned to the city, and we prepare the agenda item for the city commissioners. No permits are issued until you all approve that plan. Once that plan gets approved, then applicants who have been approved to participate can come in and they go to the permits and licensing. If you have itinerant vending, you pay your itinerant vending fee and you get your permit. If we do have some property owners who choose to pay the itinerant vending fees and get the money back from their vendors when they get here. But for the most part, everybody in the city that is responsible for areas within that master plan does review the master plan. We work very well with the chamber and the CBB. We go back and forth to make sure that we are both on the same page and we're getting all of the accurate documents. There's been some recent discussions about the quality of what they've been submitted. So we worked with the chamber and the CBB, and we have now put some guidelines in place to make sure that what you all will be receiving will be actual things that you will be able to look at to make your determination better.
If I might, the last comment was made, we made those revisions because of citizen complaints that were valid. And we saw that in the master plan committee and stepped in to do that. And the week time that was mentioned was everybody had submitted, the committee was ready, and the committee agreed there were certain things that needed additional revisions. Those revisions were dictated to the particular applicants, and they had a timeline to revise and resubmit in order to be a part of the plan. That timeline was met by everybody, I think, that was given the opportunity to do that. That's how it comes. That's why I say it's like a site plan, a master plan, and permits are issued pursuant to that site plan.
I think Commissioner Reed was trying to get clarity on the reasonings why the property owner and I took that.
And I did, both did an excellent job explaining it, and it helped me. Because, for example, I'll use Ms. Hurd. She has property where itinerant vendors can be there. She is the property owner. She needs to go and get a permit to be able to have the itinerant vendors. So when she has these vendors come, I'm not gonna let you go on my property for free.
Correct.
So she has a little vendor fee for them to pay her to be on her property.
And the itinerant
And the
vending,
vendors also pay for a permit.
that is
For a
correct,
permit.
and that requirement is out of our code of ordinances. Itinerant vending is governed under the city's code of ordinances. If you want to be a transient vendor here in our city, there are some specific criteria you have to meet and fees you have to pay to be able to do it.
Right, so the vendor pays twice.
The vendor pays once. Well, they may,
Well,
the
twice.
city once.
They
I'll
pay
say
the rent and
the
they
city
pay the
once,
rent and they pay the
but they
light.
pay twice
Yes, ma'am.
because they have to pay the business owner and they have to pay the city.
Yes, ma'am.
Right.
I have no.
And the business owner has to pay as well.
I don't care if they pay 3 times.
Well,
Third
business
time.
owner, well, I do, because the business owner has to pay too.
No, I'm just talking about the itinerant vendor. They come in this time, they're not.
They take it with them. That's it. They're not investing in our city.
People are trying to create any more policies that enhance their existence. And that's what this is about. I'm trying to create policies that enhance year-round businesses. And one of the policies that we haven't really addressed is this idea of lots, unimproved vacant lots that are vacant year-round. That's the central question for me,
That's
and
why
has been for years.
we should have a requirement, lower the standards so we can have parking lots and we require those parking lots to be open all year long. And if they don't wanna do it, then they don't have a parking lot.
Okay, who among us does believe that those who have unimproved lots are, if we lower the standard and let them be in that condition all year long, that's gonna incentivize them to develop that area or that lot? Where's the incentive in there? Are we saying that we want that lot to stay a lot because we need it to remain a lot? Do we need that to remain a lot?
Does the city have the money for a parking garage?
No.
So we need parking.
I don't think that's true.
I do want to say that our CFO did state that we received funds from both events for Oktoberfest and
Just for making
sports
It just calculated.
at one time, but the money comes from both disseminated.
So if we were to develop the parking lots, taking another approach, if we were to develop the parking lots, if we ask the owners to develop the parking lots into business structures of some sort, starts developing, part of the lot would have to be parking. Not necessarily something you think. Or do we have parking standards that if you are building something, you must have X number of lots or spaces?
It depends on the zone, and in some instances we do, others we don't. On Main Street, we do not. And you have to remember the rules were inherited when they were downtown, people parked on the street, went to the store and went on, public parking on the street, and that's the rule that kind of stays with us in that respect. For new development away from Main Street, and any new development that we see in the planning department, we look at provision of parking, where that will be, and the coefficient of parking required for that particular use.
Okay.
And it's gotta be provided somewhere, whether it's in an off-site parking area or on the site. From analysis of new development, we require that analysis to comply with the code which establishes.
Are we running into a situation where businesses want to develop, but our parking rules aren't meeting that?
We have not had business proposals for new construction on Main Street, period.
Surrounding area?
Surrounding area, no, very little development has occurred. 3 new buildings on the ocean front in about 15 years.
And how many times have you heard from residents about parking and businesses?
There have been complaints in the Main Street area when the RVs were there and the noise from generators and so on. That was the primary complaint. And what you have now is that you have parking happens, period, regardless. It's just the people are there, and it turns into code citations after the fact. I think probably some of the parking restrictions I referred to occurs in the neighborhood anyway, just by virtue of the mass of people that are here during that event. And some folks come, leave their truck and trailer, and they don't see it again for another week, and it's usually there. There's a lot of different variables in respect to it, and if you take a look at what has happened at Hennessy's property, and happened some at Biddorf's, there's open space there and people park there. And there's a balance between the full-blown Mac Daddy parking lot and the vacant lot that's just ragtag and torn up. And the Anderson lot, while it needs to be maintained some, is an example of a temporary lot. You, as a commission, have approved it in 2-year intervals, not this commission specifically, but over roughly a 30-year period that has subsequently received 2-year approvals. And if you go to Commissioner May's example in respect to, are we just going to do this and become that forever? You don't have to give vested rights if you have a period of time something is approved for and it expires upon that time. You're not compelled to renew that, and standards can be written to do that, and standards can be written to say, we're going to allow parking in a way that's safe and clean and not an eyesore, but it isn't also an oasis that someone invested so much money in they can't stand it there again.
If we didn't have that parking, there would be no one visiting that boardwalk. I mean, because all you have is the parking on the street right there.
And everybody knows,
And actually,
I know people on the boardwalk, and I've been told by more than one, that parking is essential to their
correct.
You
And
mean
even
Anderson?
That's right, yes, sir.
Yeah, but when you say the Hennessy property,
And I'm not speaking to Hennessy, I'm speaking only to Anderson. Hennessy has been something that's kind of evolved into the mess that it is. And Mayor, you weren't here. We've been working with a developer, develop some parking on the order of a temporary style on Ocean Avenue with city site plan approval and management facilities. Hennessy is something that I would expect the commission to say somehow has to be modified if it's going to function as a parking area. The way it is, with changes in elevation, drainage, and other things, when you drive around it, it's not consistently there as a parking area, or with traffic controls that let you know if you drive over here, there's about a 3-foot drop right there on that edge. And there is a point in that property where that occurs. Biddorf is different. Biddorf is pretty level, and you pretty safely can drive around there. There's not many hidden obstacles that I know about on that property.
There was just a demo about a parking lot on Grandview. And, it's a surface lot, but they won't be able to put a garage there, 209 spaces very long. So we do have parking. So, and that's in close proximity to what we're talking
don't
about.
know if that's
True.
coming.
And the beach. Excuse me.
Is that coming for sure?
Well, you never know what's coming until it's built, but we're working on a zoning request now from the Ocean Deck for off-site parking between Grandview and A1A. And it's a surface, they proposed it originally as a surface lot. And one of the last meetings when they were here, they referenced the idea that they might like the opportunity in the future, if they found the need and the funding, to turn it into a parking structure or parking lot.
And would that be for the public or for their business?
I'm not sure what their intention is. It's a privately developed property.
Correct.
They do have one remote parking lot now that they control, and I think it's limited to their customers.
And then we need parking for the Hilton. I've been to many functions over there and actually use the Anderson parking lot when I go to the Hilton as well. I mean, parking is a big thing. Like I just said before, the July 4th parade. You have staff looking. I know Jim Morris has had to call the county. We weren't able to use their lot the last time because I think they were having some kind of gymnastic. The Peabody was having one at the same time. We used Teresa's parking lot. What else?
And
did we
Mr.
use?
Well, Mr. Anderson,
Anderson's
Mr. Anderson
parking
gave
lot.
permission for veterans to park
Correct.
his parking lot for a limited time.
It's a huge problem.
I should say, at no charge, you allow.
All right, well, to me, the question is, are these vacant lots good for us or not? Do we want to continue to have these vacant lots, or do we believe the vacant lots should be developed? And Commissioner Cantus is saying that, in a sense, I don't know the words in my mouth, there's really no need to develop those lots because we need to keep those lots as parking.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying we lower our standards. We have parking lots for the people, and they have to do it all year long. If they don't want to, they can develop on their land as well. But what we are making them do now, it'll never become a parking lot because they're not going to invest all that money just in case something does come their way they want to build. But right now, who's coming our way in the first place when we have so many people over there complaining every time a business pops up over there and someone wants to build? I mean, it's crazy. First they say they want people to build on these properties, but as soon as someone builds, then everybody's writing us, why are you allowing this? Why are you allowing, you know?
Which properties are you talking about?
I'm just talking about any property over there, and we have not had many properties, many things come before us over there. I mean, actually, I think I talked to staff. We've had a couple things within 15 years on Beachside. I mean,
You
people.
talking about beachfront or off?
I'm talking about beachfront, or I'm talking about off property, anywhere on Beachside. We need more businesses, and we cannot attract businesses without parking. I mean, even the strip along A1A, those businesses, where do they park? There's no parking. How do they attract anyone?
I think we keep getting off on A1A. I'm trying to stay on Main Street. That's really what I'm concerned about.
Well, there's not parking on Main Street. Maybe if we had parking, we could attract businesses all year long. I mean, it's worth trying to see if it works. We haven't tried it.
Find out how much parking we have, because we for the July parade, I was able to have parking, so I don't know if there was.
Yes, because Mr. Morris, Susan, they called different people so we could have parking. And then we were able on Main Street to use the little county lot right there on Main Street, which I believe that should even be a parking lot. Actually, we should have a business built there, but we're able to find parking because we made sure there was parking.
Are we able to negotiate that more often with them throughout the year? Is that something that they're interested in at all, Mr. Morris?
The county has not been, they work with us because we work with them for bike week. And they've allowed that parking area to be open to facilitate traffic on Main Street until they find a use of the property. The county's been cooperative in that respect. Their primary lots associated with the Ocean Center stay locked up. We were able to go there during the event of Peabody because we worked out a deal with them. We collect all the money for the parking that goes on their parking. And the cost for us to have it, us being Peabody in the city, we give all the revenue to the city. We collect the money from the county lot and deliver it all to the county with no deduction for our cost of collecting
they make all the profit. I mean, it's our event at Peabody, so you get the ticket for that. But they collect the revenue for the parking and the manpower it takes to collect it.
We ordinarily collect, we being staff in the city, or the Peabody, collect the money, account for it, and deliver it to the county. Before that, they would simply lock the gates, and you'd have a traffic jam and people parked everywhere and late for the show because they couldn't get in.
So,
They could not find one.
so to me, that's just personally, it's a waste of resources. Just it's sitting there staring at us, and there's nothing that we can do or offer them. Or I mean, they're making money on it now.
Well, we did.
They
We
want to
did.
do more of it. They want to do more of that.
Then, well, in terms of the Ocean Center lots, we've had a free reign with them through the Peabody to park for the event. We worked that out. It took a little while. They changed managers at the Ocean Center. I worked with the county manager and their staff to get to that point, and it's been smooth since then.
Can we get more of that?
But are we talking about event parking?
No, man, they ordinarily do their own event parking now. They've begun opening there for Bike Week, Oktoberfest. Then county staffs it, and they take the money for that. But related to Peabody, when the Ocean Center doesn't have something, we need that parking to let people get in.
And how many spaces? I mean, it's not even that many spaces.
Well, they typically only open the lot C, which is the one immediately west of the Peabody. I haven't counted it, but I imagine there's about 150 spaces in there at the most.
On the one on Main Street?
No,
No.
I'm talking about the one on C. The one on Main Street,
Yeah, I know that parking seems to be a concern.
No, no,
People,
no.
but can we
You
get back
can't,
to?
you can't,
to the-
no. It's a workshop. Workshop, so no, comprehensive workshop.
We are here to talk about.
Ma'am? Yes, we are here to talk about the Bike Week Master Plan, and I agree with your sentiment. Okay, I'll try to take us back to it. And here, I want to raise this question. Because we got one question on the floor that we can execute or not execute, and that's Commissioner Strickland's question. I'm gonna propose that the Bike Week Master Plan no longer include parking. And that responsibility be given back to the redevelopment board. Our redevelopment department create standards for parking on vacant lots. And then we create the standards. And then we will have to decide whether we want those standards to be, enhanced or how we make it more palatable for our success. So that's, for me, I believe, should be a second question that we can come back at a later time and answer. But the redevelopment department will create standards for vacant lots to be able to participate in the Bike Week Master Plan, and that will no longer be a part of the plan at all. They don't have to create that or consider that. Is that something that we can reasonably come back and consider as a commission? That gives us two questions. Now, the third question.
I'm sorry, Mayor, I got the second question, I think, but I'm not sure what the first question was.
The first question was Commissioner Strickland's question about parking
In residential.
in residential
Thank
areas.
God. I'm sorry, I didn't know.
Wait a minute, are we talking on people's property?
Yeah, all of that. That's his question. Yes, he wants to park on the property.
Okay, so who's gonna answer this question? Redevelopment?
Oh, we're gonna answer the question when we get ready.
Okay,
Hold
I
on.
think we need to talk to the chief to find out why they do that.
That's-
And why would that come back not in the master plan for the parking? I mean, that, I would think that is one thing, and it happens 1 week, a week and a half for Bike Week. I think it should be in the master plan. Then outside of that, I think it needs to come back to us, what kind of standards do we want for a parking lots for all year round? I mean,
I'm trying, I think we should take it out.
we have to have parking for biking. I mean,
Yes.
that is something, yeah, and I think it needs we need to be working hand in hand for bike week and parking. But I also agree with you that we need to find a standard that we want to have all year long.
It allows us to establish a standard, and we would have our redevelopment board to bring back something for us so that we have a standard.
But
It's not
they-
letting go around year after year after year.
I get what you're saying.
It's not in the Bike Week master plan anymore. It's a standard that we created and we can live with it. It's just a question. We don't have to.
No, I get what you're saying, but bike week and parking has to go together. We need, I mean, if we don't have this together, figure out what parking, we're gonna have people parked all over the place. We're gonna have our police department all
But
over
we're
the
doing
place.
it, we're just putting it in the hands of the redevelopment people
I
to make the
understand.
parking decision.
I understand that, but the bike week, if we have a master plan, we have to have that in there as well. For parking, we have tons of bikers and people, do you get what I'm saying?
Not really.
Okay. Staff, do you get what I'm saying? Oh, can I ask staff? Am I correct on that? We have to have a plan.
Well, it can be two items.
Okay.
It has to go together, but it can come from different sources.
Yes. But that's fine, but it has to be in the master plan.
No matter, to make it easy for you all, no matter what any of those individuals say, I'm being honest, no matter what any board, any group says, you all have to make the decision, even when it comes from the CVB or the chamber. Those documents still have to be approved by this board. So all of us can say,
I understand
so
that.
I think, that's why I said, my staff, they can make any comments.
I understand that,
So-
but we have to have a plan.
That's gonna be approved by the
Actually,
board.
pretty much, I don't even think we should have a master plan. I mean, businesses should be allowed, in my opinion, to do whatever they want in their business, but we have a master plan, so actually, that master plan has to have something for parking.
Okay, we got it. You've heard it.
Okay, I know, but
And you keep saying, but negates what we said prior to that.
I understand, but.
See?
Yeah, but it does.
So if you separate them, no matter what, we're gonna bring both of them to you, and the staff is gonna present something for you all to vote on.
That's those two. Give us 6 weeks.
It's time for us
What we did,
to move out of here. The third thing is, you have something?
yes, we haven't decided what we are actually gonna do. We're having redevelopment, look at the parking, taking that out of the master plan. What are we doing about parking lots? Are we going to lower the standards for parking
That's-
lots?
That's the third question that you have, which is, do we want to, lower the standard and allow parking lots to exist in the same way that they exist during the bike week, during bike week year round?
You're right.
I'm not gonna support that, but that's something that we could have as a third question. And we have to move somewhere, and, we've had these meetings since I've been up here, 6, 8 years, and we've never moved anywhere.
So now we just took out the parking and moved that, and now we have a master plan for bike week. We are not gonna lower the standards for the parking lots. So where is these people gonna park?
We didn't do anything. We're gonna come back and talk about it and vote.
We haven't made any decisions.
Okay, so that's all, right now, we're just.
Just put some
discussing.
items, so staff can come back and say this, how it's gonna look.
Mayor, we did have one more. Do you all want us to look at expanding the boundaries or keeping the boundaries as the same? That was something that had been discussed, and we don't want to bring that and put that on document for discussion.
I don't want the boundaries to be grossly expanded, but I don't believe that one side of ISB should be included and the other side should not be. I think, I supported that before, but after I looked at it and thought about it, that doesn't make any sense. That's unfair to one side of the street, like my neighbor across the street, that didn't.
Why are we expanding it at all? mean, the assumption is that, north is included at this point, based on that, we're saying the north is included, not, and now we should do the south, we haven't actually said we're going to do that. And I'm not sure that we need to expand it north and south.
Well, you don't agree with that.
I 100%.
Okay, you
Yeah.
stated it. But what I've stated is something that's true.
Perfect.
I think it's reasonable for us.
That's why I say, and y'all want us to bring that back to you all.
So
we haven't agreed
We
It
haven't
would
agreed
be
to
part of
have
the-
parking.
No, all of this is just on the table.
This is a workshop, we're not voting on it.
No, Rich, what we won't give you, and say, let's expand, here's the thing, here's the process. Do you wanna vote on expanding this 2 blocks, 3 blocks?
And it could shrink.
And you
I
all can
think
say,
the vote say you wanted to go back the other way, you don't want it on that street. But I think that.
we just needed to know.
And before you go in regards to expanding, I wanted to ask a couple of questions. We indicated that we expanded the reach to Fulton.
Yes, ma'am, I think Fulton is in Rose.
That's correct.
Yeah, so, but
That's where, what's on Fulton? Oh, in the.
You know where the dry cleaners is? Urban White's dry cleaner?
the old dry
You
cleaner,
know dry
car wash.
cleaners?
The car wash, the
Oh,
the
the
restaurant.
440 was.
Yes,
Come
ma'am.
on, I'll take
No,
you
no,
there.
it's
Oh,
past there. It's past there. It's a little bit past there.
One block, is that Rose?
It's a little bit past Rose.
It's
Yeah.
Fulton, it's each side of Fulton right away.
What's the little restaurant there, the pink and gray building?
CJ, go for that bar.
Oh, yeah, that's it, 440. Yeah, it's just crooked. Okay.
There's also some individuals who are interested
Which is
expanding down MLK, so it's like.
And I'm going there as well. To consider that because we have a bike club on MLK a little bit further down. And I don't need to do that.
Commissioner, where are they?
Where are they?
Dickerson Center.
Dickinson Center? Is that Sun Chaser?
Yes,
They do have the Brit, and they are in the bike master plan.
but they also have a place on Cedar. And there's someone meeting, I think, in the Jerry. Is Jerry Wilson? No.
So,
Now, I don't wanna get to the point where just because you have a bike club,
That's true, but if there's.
gerrymandering our way into, just because you have a bike club, you need to move your bike club, need to be moved into the zone. Not, because next to, it, it'll be, over in zone 5. Bike club, bike week.
Well, I'm not saying just because there's a bike, there's an interest, so let's follow up. If it doesn't, this is a workshop, and therefore, we're just discussing things. We're not voting on anything, we're just bringing some things to the table for our consideration.
and so I would like to see have come back with some kind of standard for a parking lot all year long as well.
That's what they're gonna say. You look to have a hard time.
Sometimes we don't make it very clear what we want, and this is why we have the same problem every single year, and we're back here, because staff doesn't know what we are saying.
I think they know.
They know
What
that.
we have done as it relates to this issue is nothing. We didn't make anything not clear or nothing. We have a meeting and there's been no direction. So tonight, I think we have some direction. Do we have any other concluding comments? Each member.
So will residents be able to contact commissioners, obviously, as usual, and say, hey, this is not what I want, but definitely I want to do this, all right?
And they can vote, and they can come in before we vote on it, they can speak to it, any item, say whatever it is.
And businesses.
And speaking of which, what is our next step? We're gonna be here for a second.
Mayor and Commissioners, if I may, before you come to that, there was an item discussed before you came in with the practice that we've had with buildings that open just for the bike week event, just like Oktoberfest. And whether we want to go forward and eventually, in relatively short order, say, if you're gonna open, you have to be fully code compliant. Yes or no?
100%. I'm in favor of it.
100% in favor.
But I'm 3,000, all of my life behind me.
All right, sir, you need to answer that one, that answers the question. Thank
Thank
you.
you for bringing that back up.
Ms. Harris asked for parking numbers.
She,
When we get,
I'm gonna order to start tomorrow.
You're a good man.
you don't even have to worry about it. She has no copy on anything else, people that are gonna be trying to get things done, all this stuff.
And so my question remains, what is our next step? So
we will determine, if it's gonna be, probably the first one, probably in February or so, we will get that information. If we can get the information back to you, but most likely to be that 70th. But if we can, we've heard you, that's the key thing, and the citizens will have their opportunity.
I just have a question. Commissioner Strickland's approach of parking on, it was the CRAs, right? The CRA areas, is that right, the Ringo?
Which one are you talking about? The residents or
Yeah,
the
the
vacant lots?
residents, the
The
residents.
residents doesn't have to be in CRA, it's in the neighborhood.
Just the neighborhood.
Citywide. Nobody's gonna park.
Citywide.
Citywide.
Nobody's gonna park in your yard, Stacy, don't worry.
No one's getting in my neighborhood, so I'm not worried, but citywide, I just find it very.
If they don't say citywide, we end up
Uncomfortable
out
because
here
when
trying to
I
figure
wanted
out.
vacation rentals, we had all these residents coming, we can't do this, we can't do this, or when we were doing, am I correct? Or when we were doing, we had people coming over that, so they don't come.
If we say citywide, we don't have staff spending much time trying to figure out. That's all.
Yes, ma'am.
Just the traffic patterns during these bike week events.
Sorry.
We have like the traffic patterns.
Yes.
Easy access.
She was asking, just put in notes to make sure that the traffic patterns are provided. My goal is to have the key people to make their portion of the presentation. But yeah, we'll try to get that.
All right.
I have one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
They're bringing this, just one, if they're bringing this back to us in February, are we trying to implement what they're bringing?
No.
Okay, that's what I did.
We need to give them time to make changes before tomorrow.
All right.
Let's go. Good night.